retesting. So now I'm going to provide one example. The example is, for suppose this is my inquiry form. So in this inquiry form, I have filled all the details, the name, email ID, and phone number, and I have selected the course. But I'm clicking on the submit button. So whenever I'm clicking on submit button, what will happen? The submit button is not working. I have filled all the details, but still, whenever I'm clicking on, the submit button is not working. Now, what I need to do? So whatever the defect, so I have found out this is the defect. So what I need to do? I have identify this defect, and I'm going to raise the defect, and I'm going to share the information with the developers. Okay, this information I'm going to share with the developers. Okay, now developers, they can verify whether I have raised the valid defect or not. Okay, if whatever the defect I have raised, they have accepted this is a valid defect, then the developers, they are going to perform so code modification on the development environment. Okay, once the code modification is done on the development environment, so now they are going to create one new version of the build. They are going to create one new version of the build. Okay, so per suppose I'm going to give the example, submit button is not working. Okay, so now what I'm doing, so I'm reporting this information with the developer. Okay, now we can call it as there is a new status, and we have assign status. Okay, and we have open status, and we have fixed status, and we have pending retesting, and we have retesting, verified, and closed. Okay, now what I am doing, so I have reported the defect to the developer and assigning to the developer. Now developer will accepting this is a valid defect, and he was moving it to open status. Open status is nothing but he was going to do the modification. Open is nothing but in progress, guys. So they are doing some modifications. After modifications are done, they are moving it to so this fixed status, and this fixed status, they are going to create a one new version of the build, one new version of the build, new version of the build, and deployed into QA environment. They are deploying it to QA environment. After they have moved the build into testing environment, now they are going to move the this status into pending retest. Okay, so whatever the changes they have done, so they have created new version of the build, and they are deploying into testing environment. And after that, they are changing the status into fixed to pending retest. Okay, now testers, so pending retest means testers, they need to perform retesting on that particular defect. Now testers have started retesting. Now testers, what they need to retest here? So here they need to verify submit button is working fine or not. Submit button functionality they need to check. Okay, so because of we have raised the submit button is not working. Okay, now you have retested this one, so now it is working fine. So that submit button is working fine. You guys are moving this defect into verify status, and after that we are moving it to close status. Okay, so this is the process we are going to follow. For suppose whatever the defect you guys have raised, okay, so that defect you guys are performing retesting. So while performing retesting, so the defect is still not fixed properly by the developer. Okay, they are not fixing properly the defect. Then what will happen? We are going to reopen. We are going to reopen the defect and assigning back to the same developer who has fixed that particular defect. Again, you guys are reopen the defect and sending it to and assign back to that particular developer. Okay. So this process, so whenever the defect is properly fixed by the developer, till that time we are going to perform this retesting. So this is called retesting. You guys are understand? Guys, please let me know. You guys are understand?
Sir, can you repeat once again?
Yeah. See, per suppose this is my submit functionality is not working. Submit button is not working. I have raised the defect and the status is new status and assigning to the developer's name. So that particular developer name. Now developer will verify this is a valid defect or invalid defect. He was accepting this is a valid defect. Then he was moving it to open status. Here open status, or we can simply call it as
Ready.
not ready. So in progress. We can call it as in progress. Means developers are changing code modification for that particular defect. Okay. Now they have changed the code modification and they are moving it to fixed status. Okay. Whatever the fixes have done, they are going to create one new version of the build. So this is the build they are creating and that build will be deployed into testing environment. Okay. So we have two types of environments. I already explained. Okay. So we have staging and QA. Staging, or we can call it as development environment, and we have QA environment. Okay. So here the developers are working and here we testers are working. Okay. So we have identified the defect and we have reported to developers. The developers, they are going to do the code modification in this environment. Okay. After code modifications are done, they are going to create this new version of the build and this build will be deployed into testing environment. After that, they are changing the status. They are moving it to pending retest. Okay. If they have created the new version of the build, but they are not deploying it to QA, they are not changing this status. Once they have moved the build into QA, then only they are going to move this status. Okay. And after that, so we need to perform retesting. So what we need to verify, submit button functionality is working fine or not, we need to verify. Okay. If that is working fine as expected, okay, then we can verify and close out the defect. If the defect is still existing on the application, okay, then we are going to reopen the defect and assign back to whatever the developer who was fixing the defect. Again, we are going to reassign. Okay, this process is continuously doing whenever the defect is properly fixed by the developer. Understand?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Naresh, you have any questions?
Sir, after retesting, is it assigned to developers? Assignments?
No. See, assign means if the defect, see, per suppose you are the developer, right? Okay, I'm the tester. Okay, you have fixed the defect, but I'm testing, retesting. Okay, still the defect is not fixed properly. That means submit button functionality is still not working. Okay, then again, I need to assign back to that particular developer only. So I mentioned, see, we have retested the defect, but still the submit button functionality is not working. And again, reassign to that particular developer. You are the developer. I'm going to assign on your name. Understand? See, per
Yes, sir.
suppose I'm going to see, this is the defect. You guys can see, this is my defect. This is not working. So what I'm doing here, see, here there is a assignee name. You guys are able to see? Okay, here, whenever I'm performing retesting, my name is displaying. Okay, if the defect is not working, then I'm going to assign this person and that will be notification will be generating to that particular developer. Means the still defect is not properly fixed.
Okay.
Okay, so this is called retesting. Understand? Any questions?
No question.
Okay, so fine. I'm going to provide the definition. Retesting means testing again and again to make sure whether the defect has been fixed or not. Okay, and one more definition we can call it. Retesting means testing again and again to make sure whether the defect got fixed by the developer or not. Okay, so this is the retesting definition, guys. Okay, now I'm going to explain scenarios. Scenario one. So how we need to explain the interviewers. Okay, don't explain these definitions directly, guys. You guys need to explain the scenarios. I'm going to provide the scenario one here. Okay, so I have identified a defect associated with inquiry form associated with or otherwise I can directly mention submit functionality. Submit functionality. Okay. Now step 2, what I am doing here. So I have reported this defect information with developers. Okay. Now step 3, developers confirmed us that they are going to do code modifications to fix the defect. Okay, see, developers are, so before that, here I'm going to mention developers are confirming this is a valid defect. And they are going to do a code modification. Okay, so they are going to do some code modification on that particular application. Okay, now developers fixed the defect and created a new version of the build. And after that, developers deployed the new version of the build into testing environment. They are moving it to testing environment. Now, step 6. Now, we means nothing but a testers have retested the defect which we have raised for search submit functionality. Okay, which we need to verify submit functionality is working fine or not. Okay, now if the defect got passed, then we can close the defect Otherwise, we can again reopen the defect and assign back to developer. Assign back to developer. Okay. So these are the steps you guys need to explain while giving the scenarios. Okay. You guys need to provide, this is the scenario. See, in this place, you guys can take any type of example. That is okay. Not only submit, you guys can take any type of example. If there is a login, you guys are using login, you guys are entering valid username, valid password, then you guys are clicking on login button. It is not working, or there is some filters are there, filters are not working. Okay, so you guys need to give one scenario. If you guys are explaining this one is not required. Okay, see, they are expecting this one, not the definitions. You guys are understand?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
so this is the one we need to do, guys. And one more thing. So before raising the defect, what we need to do means, so we need to compare the testing, we have identified one defect. That defect is a valid defect or invalid defect. You need to verify first. Okay, so for suppose I'm giving one scenario. Scenario 2. Okay, so how I'm going to provide scenario means, testers identify the defect. Okay, and before raising or reporting the defect to developer, it is better to do retesting once again. Okay, that means you guys need to compare the results 1 and result 2. Compare test 1 results with test 2 results. Okay, so compare test 1 results and test 2 results means, for suppose if you guys are tested first time, it is showing error. Okay, so the search functionality, this submit functionality is not working. You guys can test in incognito mode. Okay, incognito mode. So if you guys are tested on incognito mode, maybe that functionality is working fine. Okay, if both are not matching, don't raise the defect. If both are matching, test 1 and test 2 results, then you guys can raise the defect. You guys are understand my question?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Okay, sometimes what will happen, there are some cookies are there. So based on that cookies are stored. Okay, based on that, we guys are find out some negative defects. So that is the reason, to avoid invalid defects. To avoid invalid defects, we are going to test 1 and test 2. We need to compare test 1 and test 2 results. Okay, if still, if tester observes defect, then it is better to inform the developer. Okay, guys, why we need to avoid this invalid defect means, if you guys are raising valid defect, okay, so your performance is good. Okay, if you guys are continuously raising invalid defects, then it is impacting on your performance. Okay, continuously you are raising invalid defects, what will happen?
We are not testing it properly.
You don't know testing, right? So you don't know testing. If you guys continuously raising the negative defects, the invalid defects, then we can simply say that you don't know how to perform testing. Okay, so if you guys are done this one, then what will happen? So we are going to avoid the invalid defects. Okay, this will help to reduce invalid defects in the project. Okay. So what is invalid defect? What is invalid defect? What is invalid defect? Tell me guys, what is invalid defect? A defect which is reported by the tester without understanding the requirement properly. You guys are understanding without understanding the requirement. You guys are not only requirement. If you guys are not understanding the functionality also, you guys are going to raise the invalid defects. Okay, so to avoid this type of defects, we are going to perform this compare one and compare two results. Okay, understand?
Yes, sir.
Okay, next topic, regression testing. Regression testing. Okay, see, regression testing, I'm going to provide some general scenarios, and after that, see, in regression testing, so why we need to perform regression testing means simply I'm going to provide impacted areas we need to test. There are some impacted areas are there. So those impacted areas we need to test. So that is the reason we are going to perform this regression testing. So impacted areas means, per suppose, if you guys are using a mobile phone, so in that mobile phone, your keypad is not working. Okay, you have reported to the technician has fixed, and you guys are performing retesting on your mobile phone. Now keypad is working, but previously speakers are working fine, but after fixing the keypad, the speakers are not working. Okay, if you guys are fixing any defects, so I'm going to provide. So there are two scenarios we are going to perform regression testing. Regression testing is performed in two scenarios. Okay, the first one is after fixing the defect, we can perform regression testing. Okay, on second scenario, if any new feature is added into existing functionality, we can do regression testing. Okay, so these are the two scenarios we are going to perform regression testing. So I'm going to provide one example here. Okay, per suppose, if there is my application, this is my application. So in this application, what will happen? I have, this is the area I'm going to perform testing. Okay, so in this area, I have find out there is a defect here. Okay, this is the my defect. I have find out the defects. Okay, now the defect is raised to the developer, and developer fixing this defect, and we have performed retesting, and this defect is now working fine. Okay, but what will happen while fixing this defect? Maybe developers, they intentionally, see, in the coding, they intentionally cannot change any modification. But what will happen while fixing this issue? Maybe there is a comma or there is a full stop is extra added in that particular program. Then automatically this total functionality is failing. Okay, so we need to verify if this is working fine. After that, you guys need to verify the total functionality is working fine or not. So because of while fixing this issue, it is impacting on this area, we are going to perform regression testing. You guys are understand? After fixing the defect only, you guys need to check this, the total functionality. Otherwise, not required. Any confusion, guys?
No.
See, just now I had given. So if you guys are previously mobile phone has given it to the mobile technician, your keyboard is not working. Only keyboard is not working. Remaining are working fine. But after fixing the keyboard, the speakers are not working, or otherwise the display is not working. See, why not working? By mistake. By mistake, maybe the connections are removed. See, the developer cannot intentionally do the changes. So by mistake, there is a mistake is happened. So that is the reason once the defect is fixed, then we are going to perform regression testing on that particular application. Okay, this is one scenario. This is one scenario, guys. This is called after fixing the defect. This is called after fixing the defect. And next one, any new feature is added into existing functionality. Any new feature is added into existing functionality means, see, this is my application. So in this application, what will happen? So this area we have developed. This area we have developed and we have tested. Okay, this application is we have completed in the previous releases. Okay, but module is same, guys. Module is same. Now my customer has come up with some new feature. Okay, they are come up with new requirement. Okay, so this is already existing functionality and this is the new requirement. Okay, they have developed this part. The developers are done this part. Now testers also, they need to perform testing on this particular feature. Okay, if this is working fine, the functionality is working fine, then again we need to cover this area under regression testing. Why? Because see, this is the same module, but what will happen while changing this code modification? Maybe there is any impacting on this particular area. So that is the reason we are going to perform regression testing. Any new feature is added into existing functionality. This is the existing functionality and this is the new functionality. If they have adding into existing functionality, then automatically maybe something is happened in this particular existing functionality. So that is the reason we need to test the total application. You guys are understand?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is called regression testing. Okay. I'm going to provide no scenarios. Okay. And scenario one, and I'm going to provide two scenarios for after fixing the defect and after regression, any new feature is sorry guys. Okay, so I have identified one defect and reported to developer. Developer fixed the defect and send it to testing team. Send it to testing environment. Then testers performed retesting on the defect and closed the defect. Then testers can perform regression testing on the application because is there any impact? Is there any impact on the previously working functionality? We can perform regression testing. Okay, so this is the scenario 1 after fixing the defect. And scenario 2, okay, if any new requirement is added into existing functionality, then we need to check newly added functionality. If the newly added functionality is working fine, then we need to perform regression testing on the previously existing functionality, because newly added functionality cannot be impact on the previously working functionality. See, simply I'm giving, this is the example, I'm giving the general scenario. I think you all are know, there are some bikes are there. Bikes, they are going to add some newly, the focus is not, the headlight focus is not good. Or some peoples are adding some new lights because of, there is some decorations they are doing on the bikes. Okay, so what will happen? So first of all, they are adding some new lights on that particular bike. We need to verify newly added lights are working fine or not. Okay, and after that we guys need to perform existing we have, there are some signal lights are there. Okay, those things we need to verify. Okay, so newly working, whatever the newly added, those are working fine. Again, we need to verify already existing functionalities are there. So those lights also working fine or not, we need to verify. Why we need to verify means, see, so the connections, for the lights, the connections are coming from same battery. Okay, while adding new connections, maybe they are removing the previous connections. So that is the reason we are going to perform regression testing. Okay, so in interviews, they are going to ask one question. Each and every defect you are performing regression testing. Each and every defect you are performing regression testing. The answer is no. The answer is no. We are going to perform regression testing once all the defects are closed. Okay, because of, see, if you guys can see one defect I have reported to the developer. So in that particular sprint, I have reported 10 defects, but one defect is fixed by the developer and they are sending it to testing environment. We are not going to perform regression testing. Why? Because see, if you guys are performing regression testing, so each and every defect, you guys need to perform 10 times on the application regression testing. But after all the fixing the defects, so then only we are going to perform regression testing. Only one time we are going to perform regression testing. Okay, so this is the very, very important question, guys. They are going to ask in the interviews. Okay, and these two topics are very, very important. Okay, regression testing and retesting each and every interview. What is the last concept? Smoke and sanity testing and retesting and regression testing. Each and every interview, they are going to ask these questions. Okay, and regression testing. So there are two types of regression testing. There are two types of regression testing. There are two types of regression testing. One is partial regression testing, and second one is full regression testing. Okay, so partial regression testing, full regression testing means, for suppose this is my application, I have different types of modules. Okay, module 1 and module 2 and module 3 and module 4. I have 4 modules. If I am going to perform regression testing on this particular module, then we can call it as partial regression testing. If I am going to perform this particular module, we can call it as partial regression testing. If I am going to perform this particular module, okay, single module, if you guys are performing regression testing, then we can call it as partial regression testing. Okay, now comes under full regression testing. If you guys are integrated this all the modules, if you guys are integrated this all the modules, okay, if you guys are integrated all the modules, you guys are integrated all the modules, then you guys are performing regression testing all the application from starting to ending. You guys are performing regression testing, then we can call it as full regression testing. Partial regression testing means if you guys are performing single module testing, can call it as partial regression testing. If you guys are integrating all the modules, then you guys are performing, there is end-to-end flow, we can call it as full regression testing. Understand, guys?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'm going to provide the notes here. So partial regression testing means module wise we can perform regression testing. We can call it as partial regression testing. Okay. Full regression testing means all the modules are integrated, then we can perform end-to-end flow regression testing. Then we can call it as full regression testing. Okay, so this is the retesting and regression testing concepts. Okay, so if you have any questions, please let me know, guys.